Hey, what are you doing with that?
Well, I was trying to get into character for today's story.
Let an expert handle this. Oh, hey friends. I'm Nathan. This is Majors.
And this is the Bible Den.
We created this space to tell Bible stories for you. So, Majors, what story should we tell today?
I was thinking of a story about a little guy who stands up to a big guy. I'm talking about David and Goliath. This is gonna be fun. So, let's get into the Bible. Our story starts with two armies, the army of the Philistines and the army of Israel. Both armies were camped on a mountain, and between the mountains was a valley. One man stepped forward from the Philistine army. He had a bronze helmet on his head, a coat of heavy armor, bronze armor protecting his legs, and to top it all off, he had a javelin strapped to his back. This man was Goliath.
Why have you come to battle today? Why don't we settle this mano a mano? Send forth your best man to come and fight me. And if he wins, we will all become servants of Israel. But if I win, you will all become servants of the Philistines. When the army of Israel heard these words, they were afraid to go and face Goliath. Even their king, the famous King Saul, was too scared to go and face Goliath.
Now let's take a pause from this battle and travel over to Bethlehem, where a young lad named David is the shepherd for his family's sheep. As a shepherd, David's job was to protect the sheep, so he would have a staff and a sling with him in case an animal attacked. David was the defender and the protector of those sheep.
So when a scary animal would come to attack the sheep, David would pull out his sling, and he was there as the defender for those sheep.
Hi, I am Francis Wesley Fitzgerald III, and this is Fact Time. Here is the type of slingshot that might be used today. But it's important to note, this is not what David would have used. This is more like the style of sling David would have used. He would be spinning this around his side like this, and then when he was ready, he would release one side and the rock would go flying. Ow! 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 Ugh! Yeah, I'm not very good at this. It is said if someone was good at using one of these, they could send a rock over 1,000 feet. So it makes sense that David would keep one of these with him to protect the sheep and keep predators away. This has been Facts with Francis.
Thanks for the facts, Francis. Now, time to test this thing out.
Okay, be careful with that.
Let's get back to the story. Jesse, David's father, calls David to go and take food to his 3 older brothers that were part of the camp of Israel. So David travels to the camp of Israel, and then he looks for his brothers.
As David finds his brothers and begins to speak to them, Goliath walks down into the valley and begins to shout at Israel.
Is there not a man here brave enough to face me? Maybe your God is not as powerful as your people claim.
And David looked around to the men standing next to him and he said, "Why is no one standing up to fight Goliath? Don't you hear what he's saying about God?"
And David's older brother said, "David, what are you doing here? Who's watching the sheep? You need to go back home. You don't know what you're talking about." But David kept asking questions. And then those people told other people about a boy asking questions.
And then those people told somebody else about a little boy asking questions.
And then that somebody else told those other people
And then
about a
somebody
boy
else,
asking
so
questions.
somebody else been asking questions.
And then that somebody else told that somebody else, and then that somebody else told somebody else.
And then somebody else.
Finally, it got reported back to Saul that a young boy was asking questions about wanting to face Goliath.
David told King Saul, "Don't worry about Goliath. I'm going to fight him." King Saul was surprised. He said, "But you're just a lad, and Goliath has been fighting since he was a lad." David told King Saul, "I am a shepherd of sheep, and when a lion or a bear came to attack the sheep, I protected them. I have beaten both a lion and a bear, and this man who defies God, don't scare me."
And so even though Goliath was a giant of a man, David wasn't scared. I wonder, how tall was Goliath?
So, the big question everyone always has is, how tall was Goliath? According to the Hebrew text of Samuel, he was about 6 foot 1 inch. But according to the Dead Sea Scrolls text, he was closer to 9 feet 9 inches. Whoa, that's tall! Let's put this in perspective. The world record for the tallest man ever recorded was Robert Wadlow, and he was 8 feet 11 inches. So there's a chance Goliath was even taller than him. To sum it all up, Goliath was a really tall guy and not to be messed with.
Yeah, thanks, Francis. Wow. So I'm 6'1". So that must have been Goliath was way up there. Wow, hey!
Let's get back to the story. So because Goliath was so big and scary, King Saul suggested that David would wear his king's armor. He gave him a helmet of bronze, a coat of mail, and a sword. But when David tried to walk with all this armor on, it was too heavy for him.
"I can't wear this," David said. So he grabbed his staff and went down to the brook. He found 5 smooth stones and put them in his pouch.
When I was a kid, one of my favorite activities was to go down to the river and skip stones. And of course, I always had to find the perfect stone because I wanted to get as many skips as I could. This is kind of what David was doing, except the stones he was looking for were for his sling.
After David got his stones, he went down to the valley between the 2 mountains to face off with Goliath.
Oh, hey, Remy.
Hey, Rena.
You're gonna sing a song with me?
I would love that, Rena.
Awesome. Okay, let's sing together, friends. There once was a boy named David, who watched over his sheep. One day a wolf came and scared the sheep away, so David picked up his sling.
Oh no! A smooth stone went inside his sling as David wound up to throw. A smooth stone came out of his sling that wolf didn't even know. Through the air it spun and spun. It hit the wolf first try. And now that wolf was on the run, on God David had relied.
That was awesome, Remy. We want to sing another one?
Okay.
Okay. There once was a boy named David who watched over his sheep.
Over his sheep?
One day a wolf came, scared the sheep away, so David picked up his sling.
Oh no, here we go again!
Scared the wind
Inside his sling, as David wound up to throw. A smooth stone came out of his sling that wolf didn't even know. Through the air it spun and spun. It hit the wolf first try. And now that wolf was on the run, on God David had relied.
Thanks, Remy.
That was wonderful.
We don't have time for all this music right now.
Let's get to the battle. So David and Goliath went to face off, but Goliath saw that David was just a youth.
Am I a dog? that you come to me with sticks, you and your God will be defeated on this day.
You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of Israel, whom you have mocked. This day, the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down. And all will see that the battle is not won with a sword or a spear, but by the hand of God.
And when Goliath heard this, he became angry.
As Goliath was charging at David, David takes out one of his smooth stones from the brook and places it in his sling. I like to imagine that he says a small prayer here. Then he takes the sling and begins to swing it around.
As the stone flies out of the sling and goes through the air, it hits Goliath right in the forehead.
David wins! The army of the Philistines is terrified and they run away, and the army of Israel chases after them. King Saul hears about what David did and he says, "Who is this lad?" And this is the end of the story of David and Goliath, but it's only the beginning of the stories of David and the many adventures that he has.
If you wish to read this story for yourself, it can be found in 1 Samuel chapter 17. I would encourage each of you to read this story and many of the other stories about David.
What I like about this story is no matter how small or unqualified you may feel for a challenge in your life, God will be with you if you ask Him.
So let's think about this story in a practical sense. Let's say you have a bully in your life now. What should you do?
Whoa!
No, I don't think the answer is that you should fight them or throw rocks at them. We have to remember that David was in a time of war, which is far different than if you have a bully in your life now.
I think in this day and age, if you have a bully in your life, you should do what David did, which is to stand up to the bully. But first, you should ask for help.
And the best place to start is to pray. And don't just pray for yourself, but pray for that bully. And then go find a teacher or a parent and tell them what's going on. Now, if you end up confronting that bully on your own, remember, fighting is not always going to be your best option.
Your words are powerful. Tell the bully how you feel, and let your words be like the stone that David sent through the air to strike down the bully in his life.
Thank you so much for listening to the story today, and I encourage each of you to share this story with your friends and tell it to them for yourself.
And of course, tune in next time for more stories as we go into the Bible.
There once was a boy named David,
David?
who watched over his sheep. One day a wolf came and scared the sheep away, so David picked up his sling.
Oh no! A smooth stone went inside his sling as David wound up to throw. A smooth stone came out of his sling that wolf didn't even know. Through the air it spun and spun. It hit the wolf first try. And now that wolf was on the run, on God David had relied.
That was awesome, Abby. We want to sing another one?
Okay.
Okay. There once was a boy named
Named David.
who watched over his sheep.
Over his sheep.
One day a wolf came, scared the sheep away, so David picked up his sling.
Oh no, here we go again.
Secured the lint
Inside his sling as David wound up to throw. A smooth stone came out of his sling that wolf didn't even know. Through the air it spun and spun. It hit the wolf first try. And now that wolf was on the run, on God David had relied.
Why are you taking a nap, Majors? We gotta get to the zoo.
Oh, we can't go to the zoo today. It's raining outside.
Well, then what are we gonna do today?
Oh, I got an idea. Let's tell a Bible story with a lot of animals and some rain.
I think I know what story you're thinking of.
Yeah?
It's the Bible story with the most animals in it. Do you know what story we're thinking of? If you do, say it out loud. Ready? And be loud.
Noah's Ark! It's a great story about faith, animals, and the power of God. So let's get into the ark! Oh, wait. Oh, I remember. Let's get into the Bible!
Our story starts in the time of Bible times. It was a sad time in the history of man. The earth was filled with sin. Everyone had become selfish, wicked, and full of violence.
God knew that there was only one way to save mankind, and so he had decided to cleanse the earth with a flood. But there was still one man who walked with God. His name was Noah.
God told Noah that he was going to destroy the earth with a flood. But because Noah was faithful, God asked Noah to build an ark to save himself and his whole family.
And the animals too. Now, I don't know if Noah was a carpenter. That's somebody who makes things using wood. But I bet he never had a project this big in his entire life.
This was not going to be an easy task. Noah had to build an ark big enough to fit his whole family and 2 of every animal.
Think of all the wood he had to cut with just an axe.
It's too bad he didn't have a chainsaw or a power drill. Instead, he had to use basic tools. So it took him a long time, 120 years. That's older than my grandpa.
Hey, I take offense to that.
Wait a minute. How big was the ark anyway?
Hey, Francis here. It's fact time. The measurements for the ark are found in the Bible. If we translate to today's measurements, the ark was about 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. That is a lot of space. That's about 100,000 square feet. That's like a mansion. The White House, where the president lives, is only 55,000 square feet. Noah's Ark was almost double the space of the White House. Whoa!
Whoa, that's massive.
Thanks for the facts, Francis. The ark must have been huge in order to hold all those animals. That's 2 of every animal on Earth.
That's 2 lions,
That's 2 bears.
2 elephants.
And to think, all of these animals were called by God. Quick, name every animal you can think of. Ready? Go!
Cats,
Bears!
dogs,
Bears!
zebras,
Tiny bears!
giraffes.
Baby bears! And to think, all these animals were coming to the ark, one place. That must have been incredible to see.
One of my all-time favorite animals is the cheetah because they are super fast at running. I like to imagine 2 cheetahs running across a giant field to get to the ark. And then they get there and they see it and they slow down. And then they get in line behind all the other animals boarding the ark.
One of my favorite animals is the elephant, and I just love the idea of the elephant walking on with their big nose and their big floppy ears. After all the animals had gotten on the ark, Noah and his wife and their 3 sons and their 3 wives also got on the ark. So now that's 8 people, and 2 of every kind of animal are on the ark together.
One day passed and nothing happened.
Another day passed, and nothing happened. They were on the ark for 6 days with nothing happening.
Then, on the 7th day, it began to rain, and it rained, and it rained, and it rained for 40 days. 40 days. The people and the animals were inside the ark together. Would have been pretty hard to not go outside.
Next time you're outside, take a long, deep breath of fresh air. And just be glad that you're not cooped up inside for 40 days as the rain comes down on the ark.
Let's sing together, friends. You ready, Remy?
Rena, I was born ready.
Split, splat, slam to the ground.
Split, splat,
money all around.
split, splat, slam to the ground. Split, splat, money all around.
The angels guard the ship and
Kept it watertight with the power of God's might.
The animals were 2 by 2.
Interesting.
The elephant down to the shoe.
Down to the shrew.
While the winds blew around the floating zoo.
Zoo.
All you saw
On
on
the
the earth
earth
was
was
blue.
Split, splat,
Slam to the ground.
split, splat,
Money all around.
split, splat, slam to the ground. Split, splat, money all around.
The angels guard the ship and
Kept it watertight with the power of God's might. Wow, that was wonderful, Rena!
So after 40 days, the whole earth was covered with water. Everything had been swept from the land except for whatever or whoever was on the ark. For the next 150 days, everyone stayed on the ark. That's about 5 months.
5 months? I bet it got pretty smelly in that ark with all those animals.
Then God remembered Noah and all the living things on the ark, and the waters began to go down. Noah then opened up a window and sent out a raven and a dove.
If there was dry land, they would have a place to stay. But if not, they would come back to the ark.
But the dove returned to the ark, which meant there was nowhere for it to stay. So everyone was stuck on the ark with all the animals.
They must have had a lot of animals, which means they had a lot of food. Nobody really knows how many animals there were. Some say about 2,000. Others say about 70,000. Whoa, imagine the smell. Woo! Feeding the animals would be no small task either. There were only 8 people on the ark to do that. Noah had to have some pretty smart engineering. He had central gutters where he could pump water for the animals to drink. Cool!
After the dove returned, Noah waited another 7 days before sending it out again. As you can tell, 7 is a very important number in this story. So after 7 days, Noah sends the dove out again. But this time, it comes back with an olive branch, which means that there's dried land and the waters are going down.
Noah waits another 7 days before sending the dove out again. And this time, it doesn't come back. It must have found ground, dry ground.
Or maybe it didn't want to come back to the smelly ark. As Noah lifts the cover of the ark, he sees the dry ground for himself. And if it had been me, I would have wanted to jump off the ark right then. But Noah waits for God. And finally, God speaks to Noah and tells him to take his family off the ark and then let all the animals go.
The ark opens. Noah and his wife and their 3 sons and their 3 wives all leave the ark. And then all the animals leave the ark too.
It must have been a real madhouse. Just imagine the elephants pushing their way through, the lions roaring, roar, and of course, my favorite, the cheetah, running out, bolting away, probably never to be seen again.
After all the chaos, Noah made an altar for the Lord, and the Lord told Noah, "Go and take care of your family and all the animals in the land." God also made a promise to Noah that he would never again destroy the world with a flood. The rainbow was a sign of this. So whenever you see a rainbow in the sky, remember, God will always take care of you.
So how is this story useful for today? Well, if you see others doing bad things, don't join in. Be a Noah. Even though it might not be cool at times to do the right thing. Read your Bible, pray, and try to grow closer to God. And He will take care of you and bless your family just like He did for Noah.
If you want to read this story for yourself and maybe share it with your friends, you can find it in the Bible in Genesis chapter 6 through 10. Thanks for being with us today.
And we'll see you next time when you come join us in the Bible Den for another fun story when we go
Into the Bible!
You know what, Rena? I was thinking the other day about the Earth and how big it is and how it got here. Do we have a song about that?
You know, I think we do. Do you want to sing it?
I would love to, Rena.
First he made the
It was just right.
then he made it.
We cannot spare
Land and sea.
fruit and trees. Oh, and the light was dividing the day from night.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I
It's
didn't mean
okay.
to just go off on
Oh, no,
myself
it's-
like that.
It's okay, Remy. It's okay.
Okay.
Fifth was for fish.
And birds of the air.
Six living creatures.
And manly features. Oh, and women too, of course. Hey, Rena, what happened on the seventh day?
And the seventh God rested.
And the seventh God rested.
He created this day to rest.
Isn't God just the best?
First he made the
It was just right.
then he made it.
We cannot spare
Land and sea.
fruit and trees.
Lights divided day and night. Fifth was for fish.
And birds of the air.
Six living creatures.
And manly features.
And the seventh God rested.
And the seventh God rested.
He rated this day to rest.
Isn't God just the best?
Yes, he is.
Wow. Hey, Rena, what are we doing today?
We're gonna sing a song about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Oh, Shamrock, Meshach, and Abednego?
No, Remy. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Wait, let me try this. Schlack-mack, Yorshak, and a bending toad?
No, Remy. Never mind. Let's just sing the song, okay?
All right, sounds good. Let's go for it.
The king made a rule
To follow.
It'd be a hard pill
To swallow,
For all must bow to an idol, or they'd lose their life. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Because they are very faithful, they could all say no. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Because they were very faithful, they could all say no. See, these three Hebrews could not burn.
wouldn't
Oh,
burn.
when would the king ever learn? With Jesus by their side always, they were all just fire friends.
Wow, I want my own fire friend. Wow, Rena, now I know their names.
And thank you, God, for the really tasty food I had this morning. And thank you for my mom and dad, who love me very much.
Majors. Who are you talking to?
Amen. I was praying.
I was afraid of that. There's a new rule. No praying in the Bible Den anymore.
Wait, what?
If you pray one more time, you're out of here.
Wait, Nathan. What are you talking about? We created this place to hang out and tell Bible stories and to pray, and now you're telling me I can't pray anymore?
Yep. I'm just gonna have to throw you in with the lions.
Lions? When did you get lions? You don't have any lions, do you?
Of course I don't have any lions. You know you can pray in here anytime you want, man.
I was really getting worried. I probably felt kind of like how Daniel did when they told him he couldn't pray anymore. Oh, and that's the story we're telling today.
The story of Daniel in the lion's den. It's a story about faith, staying true to what you believe in, and the power of prayer. It's kind of a scary and intense story though, so I don't know if you can handle it, Majors.
Well, just don't scare me like that again, and I think we'll be okay. So, let's get into the Bible! If you want to follow along in the Bible today, our story is in Daniel chapter 6. Our story starts with a king named Darius. And like any smart king, he had advisors. And one of those advisors was a man named Daniel. Now, Daniel's job was to keep the king from suffering any losses. And he was really good at his job. He was so good, in fact, that King Darius was considering making him in charge of the entire kingdom.
This was great news for Daniel, but not as great news for the other advisors. They became jealous about Daniel and wanted to get rid of him. They tried to find a mistake or a complaint that he had made, but nothing was to be found. Because Daniel was faithful to both his king and God.
The other advisors, or as we're going to call them, tricksters, tried to make Daniel look bad to the king. They thought that maybe because Daniel is being loyal to both God and the king, that they would make him choose between the two.
The tricksters go to King Darius. Oh, great king, may you live forever. Wouldn't it be great if everyone only worshipped or bowed down to you? We want to write a decree or a law that says no one can worship any other god but you for the next 30 days, or else they'll be thrown into the lion's den. Don't worry, Majors. There's no lions here.
I know! They're just really scary animals.
I think that was kind of the point. Nobody wants to be thrown in a lion's den. So you had to worship the king, or else... Roar! Whoa! That was pretty good. Can you sound like a lion at home? Ready? Go! Roar! Man, I wonder, how loud does a lion roar?
Hey everyone, Francis Wesley Fitzgerald III here. And I think it's time for some facts. Lions are pretty big animals. They're found in the wilds of Africa. Male lions have a huge mane of fur around their neck. Part of what makes lions so scary is their sharp teeth and their loud roars. Their roars are so loud, they can be heard from 5 miles away. They roar to tell other lions that they're in their territory. Just imagine how loud it would be if a lion roared inside a lion's den. Oh!
Wow, that's really loud. I can't imagine standing next to a lion. But wait, the king thought this was a good idea?
Yeah, he signed the law, and everyone in the kingdom had to follow it. And the law could not be changed or altered.
But wait, what about Daniel?
Well, Daniel was in a tough spot. For you see, he had a custom that every day he would open up his window, kneel down, and pray to God. And he wouldn't just do this one time a day, but he would pray to God 3 times a day. So there was a good chance that someone would catch him doing this.
But you know what I think? I think Daniel really wasn't that worried, even though he knew he could get into some serious trouble. Because one day, he opened the windows, knelt down, and prayed to God.
And of course, guess who was watching him pray? The tricksters. They go running back to King Darius. "Oh, great king, remember that law you signed that said if anyone worshipped someone besides you, they would be thrown into the lion's den?"
And King Darius replied, "Why, yes, I remember, and that it cannot be changed."
"Well, it seems that your servant Daniel was praying to his God, and not just one time, but 3 times. What's funny to me is that these guys must have really disliked Daniel, because they could have just caught him praying 1 time. But instead, they hung around his house all day until they caught him praying 3 times.
When King Darius found out about this, he became distraught and sad because he liked Daniel. But he remembered the decree could not be changed, so he sent out a command, and Daniel was brought and thrown into the lion's den.
King Darius is also known by the name Darius the Mede. This story is not the first time he's mentioned in the Bible. The chapter before this story in the book of Daniel chapter 5, Darius took over Babylon at the age of 62. Babylon at the time was the center of the ancient world. All of the brightest minds were there. This was a great move for him as a conqueror to take over the city of Babylon. If he did not capture that city, he would never have met Daniel.
Before Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, King Darius stopped and said, "I am sure that the God you serve will deliver you." You really got to stop and think about this for a moment, because the guy who was throwing Daniel into the den stops and says, "I am sure that the God you serve will deliver you." I think this speaks to Daniel's character. I think he was a special man, and that it was easy to see he was special because of his faith and the amount of time he spent praying to God.
Daniel is thrown into the lion's den. The stone is rolled in front of it, and the king comes and seals the den with his signet ring, showing that this could not be stopped. Now, I know Daniel had a lot of faith in God, but I like to imagine that maybe he was just a little bit scared here. As the lions get closer, I'm sure they're hungry, they're growling, scratching at the floor as they get closer and closer to Daniel. Are lions really that scary, though?
Well, hello, friends. Welcome to Music Time with Remy and Rena. Rena, why don't you lead us off? Come on, friends, let's sing.
Defying decrees, not bowing a knee, landed Daniel in a huge land of lions.
Oh no, that's not good.
Lions usually roar. Lions usually pounce.
Pounce.
But sometimes God will take a lion and
Zap.
and make a house cat
Meow, 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 meow. growing part is my favorite.
I know what it was like for Daniel in that lion's den, because when I was a kid, we had 6 cats. And they were smaller than lions, but they were always jumping on everything and clawing at everything, and well, they were kind of cute. And then when they were younger and they were kitty cats, they were tinier, and they had tiny little tails and tiny little ears. Aw, cute little kitty cat. You gotta stop doing that.
I just wanted to show you that a lion is a little bit scarier than a kitty cat.
Okay, fine. Maybe I don't know what it's like to be in a dark lion's den with big old hungry lions.
You got a good point, Majors. You know, there wasn't just lions in that den. It was also probably really dark.
Nathan? Nathan? You better not be trying to scare me again.
Majors, I'm still right here. We should probably get back to the story. I'm sure our friends at home want to know what happened to Daniel. King Darius, after sealing the den, went back to his palace and spent the evening fasting, which means he didn't eat any food. He was worried about Daniel because he was a friend and loyal advisor. Darius had a hard time sleeping that night, so he woke up early the next morning and then ran down to the den.
When Darius got to the den, he called out, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God saved you from the lions?" And King Darius heard a voice. "O king, live forever. My God sent an angel to shut the mouths of the lions, so they did not harm me because I was found innocent before him."
And Darius was excited. He had the stone removed, and Daniel came out of the den, and there wasn't a scratch on him because God protected him.
King Darius took the tricksters and put them in the lion's den. Then he made a new decree that said all the people of the nation would fear the God of Daniel, for he is the living God.
This story is so inspiring to me. I think there's 2 lessons that we can learn from it. The first, if there's people in your life that are discouraging you or bringing you down, have faith in God and trust Him. He will protect you from those lions in your life. The second lesson I learned from this story is that I want to be Daniel. I want to stand out. I want people to notice me and see the light of God shining out of me.
And if you feel like Nathan, I think all we really have to do is spend daily time with God in prayer. I encourage you, find a place where you can be alone. Maybe open your own window and kneel down and pray to God and be really honest with Him when you pray.
And try to do this once a day. Maybe be like Daniel and pray 3 times a day. I think if we all do this, God will bless our lives and His light will shine out of each of us to the rest of the world.
Thanks for joining us today, and please share this story with your friends and maybe even with your parents. Now I'm gonna go have some alone time with God. But thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time when we get into the Bible.
Just call me Mr. Cool.
There's something different about you, but I can't imagine what it is.
Wait, are you sure you don't notice anything different? Something that makes me just look a little more cool?
Well, aside from the jacket that you're wearing that's 2 sizes too small, not a thing. And why are you wearing that anyway?
I'm wearing it to prepare for today's story.
Oh, I know what story it is. It's a story about a dreamer who had a coat of many colors. But your coat only has 1 color.
Oh yeah? Do you know what story we're talking about at home? It's the story
Of Joseph!
This is gonna be great. So let's get
Into the Bible!
story starts with an older man named Jacob, and he had many sons. And like most fathers, he had a favorite son. Okay, maybe not like most fathers, but he did kind of have a favorite son. And he made this son a coat of many colors, and it was probably expensive and hard to make. And as you might have guessed, this son was Joseph, the main character of our story today.
Because of the coat, Joseph's brothers were quite a bit jealous of him. Later on, Joseph would also have some dreams, and like most people, he liked to share those dreams. After one of his dreams, he went to his brothers and told them about it.
They were all binding sheaves in a field, which is kind of like bundles of wheat. All the bundles are standing upright, but Joseph's brothers' bundles all start bowing down to the bundle that Joseph had. As he told this dream to his brothers, they were not very happy.
Oh, so you're supposed to rule over all of us? This gave another reason for the brothers not to like Joseph, but Joseph kept having dreams. His next dream had the sun, the moon, and 11 stars representing his 11 brothers all bowing down to him. He told the dream to his brothers, and then he told them to his father.
As his father heard this, he turned to Joseph and said, "Even me and your mother and your brothers are all to bow down to you, Joseph?" This actually made his brothers more envious of Joseph.
Now they were all shepherds, and so after a while, the brothers went to go feed their flocks of sheep. And after some time, Jacob decided to send Joseph after them. So he packed his bags and he traveled to see them.
As Joseph was traveling to his brothers, they saw him from afar, and they began to conspire.
Let's throw him into a pit and leave him there for a wild animal to come and eat him. Then we'll see how true his dreams really are.
Man, if you thought you had a mean older brother, probably doesn't even compare to these guys. Luckily, the oldest brother Reuben convinced them not to do this.
No blood shall be shed. We can throw him into the pit and then later return him to father.
So still not super nice, but a little bit better. So as Joseph got closer, the brothers grabbed him. They tore off his coat and then threw him into the pit. Reuben left, and the other brothers began to eat some food. And then merchant traders traveled by the pit.
Judah spoke up. What do we gain by bringing Joseph back or getting rid of him? Why don't we sell him and make some money? The brothers then sold Joseph to the merchant traders for 20 shekels of silver. Joseph was then taken by the traders into Egypt. When Reuben returned, he couldn't believe what his brothers had just done.
They decided to take his coat and cover it in goat's blood. Ugh. They took his coat back to Jacob.
Do you recognize this coat, father? Of course, Jacob recognized the coat, and so he believed that Joseph was dead. He became very distraught and upset.
I am Francis Wesley Fitzgerald III, and this is Fact Time. Joseph's great-grandfather was Abraham. Not Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president of the United States, but Father Abraham. God made a promise to Abraham that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars. There's a lot of stars out there. Joseph also had 11 other brothers. That family grew and grew, and eventually became the 12 tribes of Israel. You know that song, Father Abraham had many sons? That's what it's talking about, all of Abraham's descendants.
Joseph was now a slave in Egypt. He was bought by Potiphar, who was the captain of the guard for Pharaoh. Now, I'm sure slave life was not easy for Joseph, but the Lord was with him and blessed him in everything that he did. And finally, Potiphar set him as the overseer of his house. The Lord continued to bless Joseph and the Egyptian's household.
Joseph was handsome in appearance, which might not have been a good thing because he caught the eye of Potiphar's wife. She decided she would rather hang out with Joseph than with Potiphar.
Joseph said to her, "How can I do this to my master? He's put me in charge of his whole house. You are his wife. How could I do that to him? Or sin against God?"
But Potiphar's wife kept bothering Joseph. One day, when the house was empty, she came to Joseph, asking him to be with her. She kept bothering Joseph, and finally, Joseph just had to leave. This is a good lesson. If you are ever in a situation that you know is bad or wrong, do what Joseph did and just get out of there.
But the only problem for Joseph was that he left a piece of his garment there. The wife took the garment and cried out and showed everybody the garment and said that Joseph had tried to be with her and that he was betraying Potiphar. Of course, that's not what actually happened, and Joseph was trying to get away from her.
When Potiphar heard of this, he had to believe his wife, so he sent Joseph to prison.
I'm sure life in prison was not easy for Joseph, but once again, he moved up the ranks. The keeper of the prison put him in charge of all the other prisoners. It's easy to see that Joseph was a smart and hard worker, and I think God was with him and blessed him in everything that he did.
There was a butler and a baker of the king who were both thrown in prison. They both began to have strange dreams, and they wanted to know what it meant. So they asked Joseph. Joseph said, "Tell me your dreams." So the butler started. "In my dream, there was a vine with 3 branches. The branches budded and brought forth grapes. I took the grapes and pressed them into a cup. I then gave the cup to Pharaoh."
Joseph told the butler, "The 3 branches symbolize 3 days. In 3 days' time, you will be called back to Pharaoh's court, and you will be filling his cup. Please remember me and tell the Pharaoh that I've been imprisoned even though I've done nothing wrong."
The chief baker heard about how well the other dream went, and he said, "Tell me the meaning of my dream. I was walking and I had 3 baskets on my head, full of delicious baked goods for Pharaoh. But then birds came and ate the food out of the baskets."
Joseph told him, "The 3 baskets also symbolize 3 days. And in 3 days, you will be put to death for your crimes." Yikes! So not as good for this fella. And just as Joseph said, on the 3rd day, the butler was brought back into the Pharaoh's court, and he put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And the baker met his demise. But even though Joseph was right, the butler forgot about him.
Then, 2 years later, Pharaoh has 2 dreams he cannot understand. And he brings all of the wise men together from all over Egypt, but no one can interpret the dreams for him.
Then the butler told Pharaoh about how when he was in prison, there was a Hebrew that interpreted both his and the baker's dream, and how they both came true. This is pretty crazy here because it means no one could interpret Pharaoh's dream, and so he had to go to the prison to find the only man that could maybe help him.
The Pharaoh sent for Joseph and asked him, "I've heard that you can interpret dreams. Is that true?"
Joseph replied, "It's not me, but God who will give you an answer and peace." Pharaoh then began telling Joseph his dream.
"I am standing on the bank of a river, and 7 cows come out of the water. They are fine looking and fat. But then 7 poor and ugly cows come out of the water, and they eat the first 7 cows, but they stay looking the same. In my second dream, 7 heads of grain come up on the same stalk. They are full and good. Then 7 withered heads come up, and they eat the first 7 heads. No one has been able to tell me what these dreams mean."
Joseph said, "Both the dreams are the same. The 7 good cows and the 7 good stalks represent 7 years of plenty, which means that they're going to have 7 years of good crops. But The 7 ugly cows and the 7 withered stalks means that there will be 7 years of famine. You must put a wise man in charge to oversee the collecting of 1/5 of all that is produced during the good 7 years. So then, during the 7 bad years, there'll be enough food to feed the kingdom.
Pharaoh knew that this was good advice. No man has the Spirit of God like you. You shall be the wise man in charge of all the land. You shall be in charge of my house, and there will be no one greater in the entire land than you, except for me. Pharaoh took off his signet ring and put it on Joseph's hand. Pharaoh clothed Joseph in fine, beautiful garments and gave him a chariot to ride around in and sent a servant before him, crying out that everyone should bow the knee to Joseph. God was blessing Joseph.
Wow, what an amazing story! You don't think we have a song for that, do ya?
I think we could figure something out.
Alrighty then, join in with us, friends.
Joseph had a dream.
Oh, he did now.
He made his brother scheme.
Okay.
He said, I know what we'll do. They said,
Those dreams, they'll never come true.
but you see, dreams come true when God works in you. Yeah, He works in you. Yeah, that's how dreams come true. Pyramids and sands.
Ooh, pyramids.
Different than any land.
Yes, for
God
sure.
led him to a place.
God led them to that place.
He said,
And that's where Joseph found God's grace.
but you see, dreams come true. Yeah, He works in you. Yeah, He works in you. And that's how dreams come true.
Wow, that was wonderful.
Now, if you wish to read this story for yourself or share it with friends, it can be found in Genesis chapter 37.
Wait a minute, Nathan. I still have questions. I mean, whatever happened about his brothers? Whatever happened? His father thought he was dead. Did he ever find out that he was not only alive, but one of the most powerful men in Egypt? The famine, did it happen, or was he just tricking everyone?
You're right, Majors. We didn't finish the story. Well, friends, I guess that means you're gonna have to come visit us again in the Bible Den when we finish this story and get
Into the Bible.
Welcome to the Bible Den. I'm Majors, and today I will be telling you a Bible story. Wait a second, what story was I telling again today?
Hi, Majors. Welcome to the Bible Den. Wait, you're not Majors. I'm Majors. You're just an imposter trying to take my place in the show.
I was just trying to change things up a bit.
Well, you know, it is kind of a good example because our story today is about one of the great imposters in the Bible. Do you know the story of someone who tried to trick their own father into believing that they were someone that they weren't?
Maybe you guessed it. Our story is about Jacob, a young man who tried to pretend to be someone different. Kind of like I was doing with Majors.
Now, before you tell them the whole story, let's get into the Bible.
Our story starts with the son of Abraham, Isaac, and his wife Rebekah having twins. But there was a problem. Even while the twins were still in Rebekah's womb, they were fighting each other. Rebekah prays to the Lord and says, "What's going on?" because you see, she didn't know that she was going to have twins. The Lord actually speaks to Rebekah and says,
2 nations are in your womb. 2 people will be separated from your body. 1 people will be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger.
It's cool to see that God actually spoke to Rebekah, saying, "You're having twins." Time passed and the boys were born. The first one came out red and hairy, so they decided to call him Esau. The second one came out grabbing onto Esau's heel, so they decided to name him Jacob. The boys grew up and they could not be any different from each other.
Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field. Jacob was more mild-mannered and stayed in the tents. Unlike parents today who love each and every one of their children equally, Isaac liked Esau a little bit more than he liked Jacob, and Rebekah liked Jacob a little bit more than she liked Esau.
One day Esau came back from the field. He was tired and hungry, but Jacob just so happened to be making some stew. He saw his hungry brother and said, "Sell me your birthright. I will give you this food for your birthright."
Esau said, "I'm about to die here. What good does a birthright do me?" Esau gave Jacob his birthright, and in exchange, Jacob gave Esau lentil stew and bread.
I'm sure Esau just started eating that food right away. This was kind of mean of Jacob, but it was also kind of foolish of Esau to sell his birthright so easily.
I wonder, why is a birthright such a big deal anyway?
I'm Francis Wesley Fitzgerald III, and it's time for some facts. Birthrights were a big deal back then. The father would give the firstborn son the rights and privileges of the family. As a result, the firstborn would become leader of the family. Generally, the oldest who got the birthright would have twice as much as his siblings. Birthrights were a big deal.
Many years later, as Isaac was starting to get old, he called Esau into his tent and spoke with him. Isaac said, "Go into the field and hunt some game, and then bring it back to me that I may eat and bless you before I die." Now Rebekah was also listening, and when Esau went to the field, she told Jacob what his father was wanting.
But Jacob said, "Esau is hairy, and I'm not. What if father touches me? He will know that I'm not Esau." But Rebekah told him not to worry about that and that she had a plan. Jacob went and prepared the food, and then Rebekah put some of Esau's clothes on Jacob, and then she put goat skin on his arms and neck, and Jacob became an imposter of his brother. Jacob went into his father's tent. "My father." And then Isaac replied,
Who are you, my son?
I am Esau, your firstborn. Now eat and bless me."
But how have you returned so quickly?
"Your God has brought me the food." Jacob was being a little bit sneaky here, but Isaac was not easy to fool.
Come closer, so that I may feel you and know whether you are my son Esau or not.
Jacob moved closer to Isaac, and Isaac felt him.
You have the voice of Jacob, but you smell and you feel as Esau. Are you truly my son Esau?
"I am." Isaac ate the food and then said a blessing over Jacob.
Let people serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be master over your brethren, and let your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be those who bless you.
Jacob left his father's tent, and then Esau entered his father's tent with the food he had prepared. "Father, I have brought what you asked."
Who are you?
"I'm Esau."
Isaac realized what had happened.
It seems your brother has come with deceit and stolen your blessing. It is too late.
"He has taken my birthright, and now he takes my blessing. Father, please, bless me still."
It is too late. You will live by the sword and serve your brother.
When Esau realized what had been done, he became angry at Jacob, and he vowed that when Isaac passed, he would kill Jacob. But Rebekah had heard this, and so she told Jacob to run away to her brother in Haran.
And Jacob did what Rebekah said one last time, and he ran away from Esau towards Haran. But on the way, the sun began to set, and he began to get tired. He found a stone, placed his head on it, and went to sleep.
Jacob had a dream as he slept on the ground. Angels were dancing all around, climbing up the ladder into the sky, climbing up the ladder to help us know why. Ladders go up and ladders go down, but wouldn't you know there's something I found? Jesus, he loves you and wants to protect you. He's come up, down, and around just for you. Jacob had a dream as he slept on the ground. Angels were dancing all around, climbing up the ladder into the sky, climbing up the ladder to help us know why. Ladders go up and ladders go down, wouldn't you know there's something I found? Jesus, he loves you and wants to protect you. He's come up, down, and around just for you.
Wake up!
When Jacob woke up, he decided to call this place Bethel. He made a vow that one day he would return to this land, but for now, he continued his journey to the east.
As he was walking, he came across some shepherds giving water to their sheep. They told him that he had arrived in Haran and that Laban's daughter Rachel was on her way there with her sheep to give them water. When Rachel arrived, I like to imagine that Jacob's eyes got real big.
He helped Rachel water the sheep, and then Jacob told Rachel that he was Rebekah's son. Rachel got excited and then brought Jacob over to Laban, and Laban was glad to see him as well. And Laban said, "Since you're my relative, I can't have you working for nothing. What will your wages be?"
But Jacob wasn't interested in money. Jacob was in love.
Jacob told Laban, "I'll work for 7 years for your younger daughter, Rachel."
And Laban took the deal. Jacob worked for 7 years for Rachel, but it seemed like only a few days because of the love he had for her. The wedding day came and they were married. But the next day, Jacob realized that he hadn't married Rachel. He'd married Leah. Wait, who was Leah?
You forgot, Majors. Laban had another daughter, Leah. And so Jacob went to Laban and said, "Why did you deceive me?" And Laban said, "Well, in our country, the oldest daughter has to be married off first." So it seems the great impostor was tricked himself.
Laban told Jacob that if he worked another 7 years, he could marry Rachel too. Now, today you wouldn't marry more than one person, but back then it was more of a common practice. And Jacob loved Rachel so much that he agreed. So he worked another 7 years to marry the woman. That's some real dedication.
He was finally able to marry Rachel. He continued to work for Laban for another 7 years, and the Lord blessed both Laban and Jacob. He decided it was time to return to his homeland. So Jacob traveled to the east, and as he was going, he sent messengers to his brother Esau, saying, "From your servant Jacob, I have been with Laban until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, and servants, but I wish to find favor in you." But when the messengers returned, they had bad news for Jacob. They said that Esau was coming to meet him with an army of 400 men.
While Jacob was gone from his homeland, Esau had been busy. He became a warrior and built up an army. And sadly, he stopped following the word of God. This, combined with an army of 400 men, would be very scary for Jacob to face.
Jacob became afraid of Esau and what he might do to his people. He even prayed to God for protection and then sent Esau a gift. It was 220 goats,
220 rams,
30 camels,
40 cows,
10 bulls,
and 10 donkeys.
and then he said,
"These are all from your servant Jacob."
This is a really big gift, so you can see how afraid Jacob was of Esau because of the tricks he had done to him in his past.
Jacob found out that Esau was still coming with 400 men. He told his family to get behind him, and Jacob went to the front lines to greet Esau. As Esau got closer, he bowed down to him 7 times.
But Esau ran to his brother Jacob, hugged him, and kissed him.
And they cried together. Esau had forgiven his brother.
Have you ever wronged one of your siblings? Maybe you're an older brother who likes to pick on his little brother.
Maybe you're the little brother and your older sister put gum in your hair and then you had to go and get all your hair cut off.
Whatever the case, I encourage you. Spend time with your siblings and remind them how much you love and care for them. And try not to fight, even though I know sometimes it can be hard.
If you want to read this story for yourself, it can be found in Genesis chapter 25. Maybe read it with one of your siblings.
Thanks for joining us today and listening to our story. Come back next time when we get into the Bible. My mom is awesome. My grandma is awesome. My great aunt removed on my uncle's side is awesome. My sister's awesome.
Majors, you don't have a sister.
Well, no, but if I did have a sister, she'd be awesome too.
Why are you listing all these amazing women?
I was just thinking about the story we're telling today.
Oh yes, this is a great story. And it's not your typical Bible story about a guy trusting in God. It's about a young woman who had faith in God to save her people. It's the story of Hadassah.
Do you know the story of Hadassah? I think most people know the story by her more common name, Esther.
This is gonna be an epic story. So let's get into the Bible.
Our story starts in the time of Bible times, when the great king Ahasuerus was having a party. And like most people, he wanted his wife there with him. So he sent out a command for Queen Vashti to come and spend time with him at the party. But Queen Vashti refused his command.
And of course, the king became furious, and the anger burned up inside of him. He called all his wise men to him and said, "What shall be done with Queen Vashti according to the law? Because she has disobeyed a command of the king."
One of the wise men told the king, "Queen Vashti has not only wronged you, but everyone else in the kingdom. Because if her actions become known to the women of the kingdom, they will stop listening to the husbands the same way the queen did not listen to you."
And the wise men suggested that the king send out a royal decree saying that Queen Vashti was no longer able to come in front of the king and that her position would be given to another. So essentially, the queen was kicked out of the kingdom for not obeying the king's command.
Well, that's a sad way to start the story. I hope everyone ends up being okay. Oh no, don't worry, I'm sure they'll be fine. Because now Mordecai and Hadassah enter the story. Hadassah's other name was Esther. She was Mordecai's younger cousin, and when her parents died, Mordecai became her guardian. Hadassah, or Esther, was a beautiful young lady.
When the decree was heard that the king was looking for a new queen, Esther was taken with many other young women to the palace. She was then chosen to be one of the few that would get to go and meet the king. This meant that she was given 7 maidservants, beauty preparations, and then sent to live in the house of women. During this time, Mordecai advised Esther to not reveal who her people were. I wonder, why would Mordecai do this?
Mordecai gave some pretty specific instructions to tell Esther not to reveal her Jewish background. It would have been real tricky if she had told them her true identity. This is why we don't really know her Jewish name, and we know her as Esther.
Esther was placed with all the other women waiting to see the king. And during this time, Mordecai was pacing back and forth in front of the women's quarters, just waiting to hear about Esther's well-being, to make sure that nothing bad happened to her.
It would end up being a long amount of time before Esther would go to the king. She had to go through 6 months of preparations of getting oil and myrrh put on her. It would then be another 6 months of perfumes. So pretty much, it was a year of making her smell better and look more beautiful before Esther would go see the king. That's kind of like taking a bath for 12 months. Ugh.
But finally, it was time to go before the king. As she walked into the royal chambers, she found favor in the sight of all who saw her, which probably means she was pretty good looking.
And right away, the king loved Esther more than any other woman he had seen. He put a crown on her head, and she became queen. A holiday was proclaimed, gifts were given, and they lived happily ever after.
Wait a second. That's not the end of the story. Let's go back to Mordecai. He would sit at the king's front gate. One day while he was there, he overheard 2 of the doormen talking about an attack on the king.
He then told Esther what he had heard, and Esther, wanting to save the king's life, sent this information to the king, saying that it had come from Mordecai. The plot against the king was proven to be true, and the men paid for this deception with their lives.
After all these things had happened, a man named Haman was promoted above all the princes and all the people in the court. The king decreed that all the people of the nation would bow down or pay homage to Haman.
When Haman came to Mordecai, he did not bow down to him, and this made Haman upset. Why do you not listen to the king's command and bow down to me?
Mordecai responded, I am a Jew. For you see, Jews will only bow down to the king or to God. Haman got very upset, but he didn't lay a hand on Mordecai or he didn't attack him. But instead, he began to think of a plan.
Mordecai was a Jew, and as a Jew, he followed the 10 Commandments, which say, "You shall have no other gods before me." Haman viewed himself as a god. That's why he was so eager to have people bow down to him. He was turning himself into an idol for people to worship. Because Mordecai only worshiped the one true God, he did not bow down to Haman.
Haman was upset about Mordecai and how he's a Jew. So he made a plan and went to the king. There's a certain people scattered among your kingdom whose laws are different than the rest. They don't follow the king's laws. Therefore, it's not fitting for them to stay in the kingdom. If it pleases you, I wish to write a decree to destroy these people, and I will pay 10,000 talents to the hands that do this."
The king listened and then signed the decree and stamped it with his signet ring. He then sent the letter out to all the nation, saying that on the 13th day of the 12th month, all Jews, young and old, were to be killed, destroyed, annihilated.
When Mordecai heard what would happen to himself and his people, he was sad. He tore his clothes, he put a sackcloth on, and he roamed the city, crying out.
Now Esther had not heard about the decree of the Jews, but she had heard rumors of Mordecai. So she got a servant and sent the servant out to find Mordecai and ask him why he was roaming the city with sackcloth on his head. And that's just what happened. The servant found Mordecai, and Mordecai explained the decree and sent him back with a copy of the decree as well.
The servant returned to Esther and shared all that he had learned and how Mordecai was requesting Esther to go and talk to the king and try to save their people. This was a really good idea, except that there was a law that said no one could go to the king unless called upon.
And so Esther sent a message back to Mordecai saying, "Don't you know that if I go before the king without being called, and the king doesn't hold out his golden scepter to me, that I could be put to death?" Mordecai sent a message back to her saying, "Maybe this is the reason why you were in the king's house."
So Esther was in a tough spot here. She had to go and talk to the king if she wanted to save her people, but it could cost her life and not even make a difference. So she could stay hidden, or she could save her people.
What shall I do? What shall I do?
What shall I do?
My people are doomed to die. What shall I do? What shall I do?
What shall we do?
Does God hear my cry?
Does God hear our cry?
My people fast and pray.
Fast and pray.
God can fight for us.
He'll fight for us.
I will be brave, because I have faith.
Because we have faith.
If I perish, I perish.
I will
If I
go.
perish, I perish.
I will
If I
go.
perish, I perish.
I will go.
Because I have faith. Royal robes, tons, crowds of light. Ladies awaiting a rise. Off to the king, quest to dine. A feast with a great surprise.
Finally, Esther decided to go and talk to the king. She fasted and prayed for 3 days. She put on her royal robes and then went to the king's court. I'm sure she was a little nervous as she walked down to the king sitting on his throne. But the king found favor in Esther, and he held out his golden scepter.
Okay, good. Now you might think that this is the excellent time for Esther to say, "Please save my people." Nope. Esther asked the king, "If it please the king, will the king and Haman please come to my banquet that I have prepared for them today?" Well, this does please the king. So he sends a message to Haman, and later that afternoon, they go to the banquet.
While at the banquet, I think the king knew that something was going on. So he asked Esther, "What is your request? I will give you up to half my kingdom if that's what you want." Wow. Now I see why Esther waited. This was a pretty good idea. So you would think she would now tell the king about her people. But instead, she invites the king and Haman to another banquet the next night. And the king agrees.
That night, the king had some trouble sleeping, so he ordered the past records read to him.
Whenever I have trouble sleeping, I like to just have some good old history read out loud to me. It always puts me right to sleep.
But instead of putting the king to sleep, he was reminded that a man named Mordecai saved his life by uncovering a plot that was set against him a while back. The king called Haman into the room and asked him,
"What shall be done for a man that the king delights to honor?" And of course, Haman thought the king was talking about him. "I think the king should give the man a robe, put him on a horse, and then have one of your princes take him around the city and say how great he is." And the king said, "I wish for you to do this for Mordecai the Jew. Put a robe on him, put him on a horse, and take him around the city and say how great he is."
So Haman did these things for Mordecai, even though he wasn't happy about it. I think it's really interesting to note that the king had Haman do these things for Mordecai, who was a Jew, just before he was going to have the Jews killed, but he had been saved by a Jew.
The banquet came that night, and the king, Haman, and Esther were all together. The king asked Esther, "What is your request, Queen Esther? I would give you up to half my kingdom if that's what you wanted." And finally, Esther says,
"If I have found favor with you, please, King, save my life and the lives of my people, for we have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated."
And the king said, "Who is he and where is he? Who would presume in their heart to do such a thing to my queen?"
And Esther replied, "The enemy is this wicked Haman."
And so the king gets rid of Haman. And Esther saves herself, Mordecai, and all of her people.
What a great and inspiring story. You want to read it for yourself? You can do so in the book of Esther. If there's something wrong or something that needs to be changed, you can take action to do that, just like Esther. But don't just rush in. Do what Esther did. First, she prayed. Then she made a plan. And then she took action and was brave.
That's a good point, Majors. Sometimes I like to just rush into a situation. But it's always better if I stop, say a little prayer, make a quick plan, and then act. Well, thank you, friends, for listening to our story today. And please, join us again in the Bible Den for when we go into the Bible.
Be brave, I will be brave, because I have faith. If I perish, I perish.
I will go.
If I perish,
I will go.
if I perish, I perish.
I will go.
What are you doing?
Just preparing for my daily jog. I find getting a little exercise always helps with my storytelling skills.
And running is a big part of our story today, too. But see, our main character wasn't running for exercise. He was running for his life.
For you see, he was a prophet, and he would deliver messages from God.
But someone didn't like the message God had for him. Do you think you know who the prophet was?
We're talking about the prophet Elijah. He was a man of God, and his story really shows the power of prayer.
So let's get into the Bible.
Our story starts when Ahab became king over Israel. But he did a lot of evil in the sight of the Lord. He married a woman named Jezebel, and together they did not worship the God of heaven, but they worshiped and served Baal, who I believe was a false god.
Now, if you remember, the first of the 10 Commandments says, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." King Ahab did more to anger the Lord God than any other king before him. And let's just say that some of those kings were not very good kings either. So you know that Ahab is going to be in a lot of trouble here.
The prophet Elijah met with the king, and I like to think he told King Ahab that God was upset with him. Elijah says, "There will be no dew nor rain all these years except by my word." I have the feeling Ahab was really mad at Elijah for this. God even tells Elijah to run away and hide by the brook Cherith.
Elijah listened to God and took off. He ran all the way to the brook Cherith, where he hid out from the king and probably the rest of the kingdom. Wait a second. What is a brook?
Hi, I am Francis Wesley Fitzgerald III, and this is Fact Time. A brook is pretty simple to explain. It is a small stream or even a little creek. In Bible times, it would have been a perfect place to get a drink of water, but probably not big enough to swim.
Thanks, buddy. Let's get back to the story. Now, Elijah is at this brook, which means he's got plenty of water. But how's he going to get his food?
Well, this is my favorite part of the story. God sent ravens to bring bread and meat for Elijah to eat. And they wouldn't just come once, but they would come in the morning and they would come in the evening. Just think about how cool this would be. You wake up in the morning, you look up into the sky, and you see ravens flying down. And they bring your food. This is great. Thanks, little friends. See you for dinner. So Elijah would drink from the brook and then get food from the ravens every day.
But eventually the brook dried up because remember, there was no rain in all the land. The next time you're caught in the rain, just let it fall on you and thank God for its fresh, restorative power.
Because Elijah could no longer live by the brook, God called him to go to
Zarephath.
And there would be a widow there that would provide for him. As he got to Zarephath, the widow was by the gate gathering sticks. Elijah called out to the widow, "Please, may I have some bread and water?"
The widow responded, "As the Lord your God lives, I have no bread. I only have a small bit of flour in a bin and a little bit of oil in a jar. I'm only here collecting sticks to make one final meal for me and my son."
This is really scary. The widow and her son were about to be completely out of food. I know next time I have food, even if I don't like it, I'm going to be glad I at least have some food. Elijah replied back to her, "Do not fear, and do as you have said. But first, make me a small cake and bring it to me. Then go prepare a meal for yourself and your son. The Lord God says that your bin of flour and your jar of oil will not be used up until it rains again."
This is pretty crazy what he's asking of her. Instead of her making the meal for her son, he asks her to make him the food first and then says that God will not let the jar go empty. I don't know if I could have done that. This really shows the good heart of the widow and how much faith she had in Elijah because she does what he asks. She makes him a meal, and then when she goes to make herself a meal, there's enough oil and enough flour. And then the next time when she goes back, there's enough oil and enough flour.
And then the next time, there's enough oil and enough flour.
And then the next time, there's enough oil and enough flour.
And then the time after that, there's enough oil and enough flour. So just imagine every time Majors takes a cookie out of the jar, there's always gonna be another cookie in the jar. Even though there's only one cookie in the jar and he takes it, there's still always gonna be another one in the jar.
It's so awesome to see how God took care of Elijah. First, with the ravens bringing him the food and the meat, and then with the jar of oil that never was empty. But not all was good for the widow. Sometime later, her son got very sick and passed away.
The widow was upset and questioned God on why he would do this to her. But Elijah took the son away and prayed over him 3 times, and the breath came back into him. And Elijah brought the son back to his mother and said, "Look, he lives." The woman knew that Elijah was truly a man of God.
So not only did God provide by giving them food, but he also used Elijah to bring the widow's son back from death in the middle of a drought.
I find that many people get Elijah and Elisha mixed up sometimes. For you see, Elisha was also a prophet of God. One of the best ways to not confuse the two is to remember that Elijah was the first one mentioned in the Bible, and he would have been the teacher of Elisha. Elijah is number 1, and Elisha is number 2.
After 3 years, God calls Elijah to go and meet with King Ahab. So if you think about it, Elijah was on the run for 3 years. As you can imagine, Ahab was not too happy to be seeing Elijah.
Is that you, O troublemaker of Israel? Then Elijah replied,
I'm not the troubler of Israel, but you and your father's household have not been following God's commandments, but have been following Baal. Let's settle this once and for all. Gather all of Israel and the 450 prophets of Baal and meet me on Mount Carmel.
Carmel.
Now, what Elijah was wanting to do here is prove to all of Israel that Baal was a false god.
Have you ever been in a situation where no one wanted to believe you? Where you knew what you were saying was right, but people didn't want to listen? I know that when I'm in that kind of a situation, the best thing I can do is to use facts to back up what I believe. My opinion, which is my view on something, might not actually be accurate, but if I know the facts and I use those facts when people don't believe me, it makes my opinion a little bit more valid.
That's a good point, Majors. I'll have to remember that. And I think that's what Elijah was doing in his situation. He wanted to prove to all of Israel the power of God and have them see it with their own eyes. You know what? I think it's time to cue the music.
Do we have a song for that?
Yeah, I think we have a song for that.
Huh. You know, I think you're right. Let's sing, friends. Elijah had a problem that stressed him out to the point that he might crack. So he yelled with a shout,
Oh, I'm not gonna pout. Bring the bread back, oh, bring the bread back to me.
Elijah had a problem that stressed him out to the point that he might crack. So he yelled with a shout,
Oh, I'm not gonna pout.
bring the oil back,
Oh, bring the oil back to me.
Elijah had a problem that stressed him out to the point where he might crack. So he yelled with a shout,
Oh, I'm not gonna pout.
bring my boy back,
Oh, bring my boy back to me. Wow, that was wonderful, Rena.
Elijah and the 450 prophets of Baal met on Mount Carmel.
Let's build an altar, and you will all call to your god Baal, and I will call in the name of the Lord. The one that answers with fire, he is God. This was a pretty simple challenge that Elijah gave. Essentially, whichever God sent fire was the real God.
He even let the prophets of Baal go first. They built their altar and they added sticks to it, and then they prayed. They prayed all day, and then they even did a dance. But nothing happened. Isn't it kind of funny to think of the prophets of Baal dancing around and nothing's happening?
Elijah even laughed at the other prophets. Maybe your God is on a journey or taking a nap or something. This made the prophets yell even louder, but nothing happened. Finally, Elijah said, "It's my turn."
Elijah gathered 12 stones for his altar, each to represent the 12 tribes of Israel. He added sticks onto it, and then he told the people around him, put water on it. So they did, and then he said, put more water on it. So they did, and then he said, do it again. 3 times Elijah had them pour water onto the altar.
Every once in a while, I like to get a big old backpack, fill it up with stuff, and go hiking with my friends in the woods. And as it starts to get dark, we always go looking for wood to start a fire with. And I can tell you firsthand that wet wood is almost impossible to start a fire with. So I think this is part of what Elijah was trying to do here. He knew that by putting water on the pile of wood, it would be harder to start, but it would show the true power of God.
After the altar was finished, Elijah went up to it and said a prayer.
Lord, let it be known on this day that you are the Lord God of Israel, and that all I have done was by your word. Hear me, Lord, that these people may know that you are the one true God and turn their hearts back to you.
And then fire from the Lord came down and lit the altar, and all the people bowed down on their face, and they said, "The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God." After that, Ahab and Elijah went up to the top of the mountain, and they looked, and they saw a rain cloud coming, and they knew that a great rain was about to begin.
Such a powerful story. It's amazing to see how God kept taking care of Elijah, from sending ravens with food to a jar that never goes empty, to sending down fire to light a pile of wet wood on an altar. I think what we can learn from this story is that if we trust God and listen to His plans, He will provide and take care of each one of us.
It might not be easy because remember, Elijah was on the run for 3 years, but God took care of him. Remember this story, and remember that God will always take care of you and protect you if you come to Him.
As always, thanks so much for listening to our story today. And please share this story with your friends and tell them the great miracles of God. Well, I think I'm going to finish my run.
Okay.
See you later.
See you, Nathan. Have a good run. And please come back next time when we go into the Bible.
Well, I don't know. I really want to hang out with you guys, but I'm not sure the steakhouse is the best place for me to eat. Well, I just don't know if I'm going to be able to find anything to eat there. Alright, well, I'll think about it and give you guys a call later.
Majors, what's going on?
Well, I just got off the phone with some of my friends and they invited me to a steakhouse, but I've been trying to eat more healthy lately, which for me means more fruits and more vegetables and less meat. So, I don't know what I'm gonna eat there.
I guess you could just say you can't go.
Well, I don't know. They've been planning this for several weeks and they really want me to go, and I guess really, I'm just afraid to say no.
Wanting to eat healthy and not knowing when to say no, this reminds me of a Bible story. Do you remember the one of Daniel and his 3 friends?
Oh yeah! Daniel, Shadrach,
Meshach.
and Abednego.
It's not as common of a Bible story, but it's still a really good one. So let's get into the Bible.
Our story starts at the beginning of the book of Daniel. The great king Nebuchadnezzar had invaded Jerusalem, and he demanded that some of the children of Israel would be brought before him.
He wanted young men who were gifted in wisdom and knowledge, quick at understanding, good looking in appearance, and the ability to be able to serve the king. These young men would be given the king's food, wine, and 3 years of training to be able to serve the king.
And of course, 4 of them were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Try say that 5 times fast. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael.
All right, let's get back to the story. Now, I will admit those names are a little bit different, and even back then they were kind of different. And so the king's court decided to give them all new names. They became Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I just love that name, Abednego. You know what? Why don't you try saying that name out loud yourself? Ready? Abednego. Abednego. Hello, Abednego.
Oh, but he forgot about Daniel, who was given the new name Belteshazzar. But don't worry, we're going to call him Daniel because that's the name he was commonly known by. The four of them were brought to the steward and were given delicacies and wine.
But Daniel felt in his heart that he did not want to defile his body with the king's food and wine. And so he asked the steward if he would be allowed to not eat the king's food. The steward liked Daniel and said,
I'm afraid that the king who has appointed this food and drink will see your faces looking worse than the other young men your age, and then I will be in trouble.
Daniel replied, Please test your servants for 10 days. Give us only vegetables and water. Let our appearance be compared to the other young men who eat the king's food and drink. And then do with us as you see fit.
He agreed to try Daniel's plan for 10 days. And at the end of those 10 days, he examined their features, and he found them to be fatter in flesh. That means they looked very healthy.
The steward, seeing this, took away the food and drink and gave the other young men vegetables to eat. Over the years, God gave these four men understanding and knowledge in literature and wisdom. And Daniel started to gain an understanding of visions and dreams, kind of like his old relative, Joseph.
Wow. It's really good to see that vegetables are good for you. I know personally that eating vegetables can be hard because there's so much junk food and sweets out there. But I also know that the more vegetables I eat, the more I tend to forget about the junk foods and the sweets. I wonder, what are some other things I can do to be healthy?
Hi, I'm Francis Wesley Fitzgerald III, and this is Fact Time. You're right, vegetables are a great way to stay healthy. Even if they don't always taste good, they're very good for you. Another very important daily activity is to drink water. It's recommended that each person drink about 8 cups a day. That sounds like a lot, but water is one of the best ways to keep your body healthy and hydrated.
Well, that about wraps it up for our story today.
Wait a second, Nathan. I thought this story was going to help me be able to say no to my friends when they want me to do something that I know is wrong.
Oh yeah, there is more to the story. It's about to get a little bit hot for our friends. Some time passes and King Nebuchadnezzar decides to make a golden statue in the kingdom of Babylon. He calls out to the land for everyone to come and bow down to this new golden statue.
One of Nebuchadnezzar's heralds cries out to all the land, "A command to all people, nations, and languages. When you hear the sound of the flute, the horn, and the harp, and other instruments played as well, you must bow down and worship the golden statue that King Nebuchadnezzar has made. If you refuse to bow down, you will be cast into a fiery furnace."
The time came and the horn was played. And the flute. And the harp was played.
Ding, ding, ding. And, the other instruments too.
And then everyone bowed down to the golden statue.
Wait a second, not everyone. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego didn't bow down because they knew it was wrong. Hey, Francis, where in the Bible does it say that we shouldn't worship golden statues?
Exodus 20 verse 4 says, "You shall not make for yourself a carved image of any likeness in heaven above or on earth, You shall not bow down to them or serve them. The 10 Commandments make it very clear that God did not want anyone worshiping anything or person over himself. He even says he is a jealous God. So I think it's important to only worship God. And honestly, that's the only person I want to worship.
Thanks for the info, buddy. So, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego knew that it was wrong to bow down and worship this golden statue.
Now, you would hope that no one saw them say no, or that no one cared. But that's not what happened. Some of the king's men did see them. They went to the king, and they said, "O king, live forever. You remember you made a decree that said when anyone were to hear the sounds of the horn, the flute, the harp, the other musical instruments, must bow down and worship your golden image." Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego do not serve your gods, nor do they worship the golden image you have set up.
Then Nebuchadnezzar, in rage, called to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to him. Nebuchadnezzar spoke. "Is this true?"
He gave them one chance to explain themselves, and then to bow down and worship the golden statue he had set up. And if they would not, they would be thrown into the fiery furnace.
The three spoke to the king and said,
"If you do this, our God will save us from the fiery furnace and from your hand. But let it be known that if he does not, we will still not serve your gods or worship the golden statue you have set up."
Wow, these guys are so bold and brave. But the king was furious, and he wanted them to be thrown into the furnace.
Hey, Rena, what are we doing today?
We're going to sing a song about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Oh, Shamrock, Meshach, and Abednego?
No, Remy. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Wait, let me try this. Schlackmack, Yorshak, and a bending toad?
No, Remy. Never mind. Let's just sing the song, okay?
All right, sounds good. Let's go for it.
The king made a rule to follow. It'd be a hard pill to swallow. For all must bow to an idol, or they'd lose their life. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Because they are very faithful, they could all say no. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Because they were very faithful, they could all say no. See, these three Hebrews could not burn. Oh, when would the king ever learn? With Jesus by their side always, they were all just fire friends.
Wow, I want my own fire friend.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Because they were very faithful, they could all say no. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Because they were very faithful, they could all say no.
Wow, Rena, now I know their names.
That's a pretty good song, but we got to get back to the story. The king commands that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than usual. He must have been really mad.
Is it getting hot in here, or is it just me? The king has his mighty men of valor bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and then they toss them in to the fiery furnace.
The fire is so hot that it actually burns the men who cast them in. So you know this was a real fire. But then King Nebuchadnezzar becomes confused and astonished, and he calls to the men around him.
"Did we not cast 3 men into the midst of the fire?"
And they said, "Yes, O king, we did."
"Then how come there's 4 men walking around the fire? They're not hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God."
King Nebuchadnezzar goes to the entrance of the furnace, and he calls out,
"Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God,
come out to me. Come here.
And they did. They came out of the furnace, and everyone could see that they were not burned at all. Their hair, their clothes, nothing had been touched by the fire. They didn't even smell like smoke.
Nebuchadnezzar spoke and said, Blessed be the Lord of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, for he sent his angel to deliver his servants who trusted in him. He then made a new decree, saying that no one was to speak against their God.
What a great story. I think I've learned something today. Even though my situation is nowhere near theirs, I still want to be healthy, and so I guess I'm gonna have to tell my friends that I take a pass on their invitation. But I can invite them over to my house, and I can make them some really tasty vegetables and a delicious salad.
That's a good idea, Majors. It's not always easy to eat healthy, but I really do believe that God wants our bodies to be in the best condition they can be in. And just like the story today, I know when I eat healthy, I feel better inside. My mind seems better, and sometimes I'm even smarter. So, try it for yourself.
And always remember, try to stay faithful to God and put your trust in Him. God will protect you, so never be afraid to say no.
Thanks so much for listening to our story today. And if you want to hear more stories, come back again to the Bible Den, for when we go
Into the Bible. Let my people go. Do you hear me? I said, let my people go.
Majors, what are you doing this time?
I was just running over some lines for our story today.
Oh, of course, a story about a man of God who wants to save his people.
It's a classic Bible story because it talks about the strength of God and how much He loves and cares for His people.
We're going to be telling you the story of Moses.
So let's get into the Bible.
Our story starts in a sad time in Bible history. This was a little bit after the time of Joseph, and so the children of Israel now lived in Egypt. I'm going to be calling them Hebrews for this story. The Hebrews had become slaves in this land. But even though they were slaves, their families continued to grow faster than the Egyptian families.
Pharaoh, who was the king of Egypt, did not want this to happen, so he made a new command.
All sons who are born will be thrown into the river, but all daughters who are born can live.
This was very mean and scary of Pharaoh to do. I imagine the Hebrews were worried if they were to have a son. Well, this actually happened to one couple from the house of Levi. They had a son born to them. But as the mother looked on to her newborn son and saw that he was beautiful, she decided that she was going to hide him for 3 months, hoping that he would not be found.
But they couldn't hide him anymore. So the mother made a little basket out of bulrushes and put her son in it. She then took the basket down to the river and hid it among the reeds. The baby's older sister watched by the river to see what would happen to her little brother.
Then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to the river to bathe. While she was there, she saw the little basket amongst the reeds. She sent one of her servants to go and fetch it for her. She then opened the basket and saw the baby boy crying. She then said, "This is a Hebrew child."
The baby's older sister goes to Pharaoh's daughter and says, "Would you like me to find a nurse for you from the Hebrew women to take care of the baby?"
Pharaoh's daughter agrees, and so the baby's older sister goes and gets the baby's mother and brings her back.
Take care of the child until he is older, and I will pay you. And of course, the mother agrees. This is so great to me because not only does the mother save her own child's life, she's now going to get paid to take care of her own son. As the boy grows, the mother has to take him back to Pharaoh's daughter to become her son. I will name him Moses because I drew him out of the water.
Time passed and Moses grew from a boy to a man. He was probably one of the only young Hebrew men because his life had been saved all those years ago. One day, Moses saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, one of his own people.
Moses looked this way and that way, and when he didn't see anyone, he killed the Egyptian and then hid his body in the sand. What? Wait a second. I thought Moses was supposed to be the good guy here.
Well, don't worry. Moses will be good later, but you're right. What he did was wrong, and I'm sure he felt very guilty about it.
Moses feared and said, "Surely the thing I've done must be known." And when Pharaoh heard about what Moses did, he sought to kill Moses. And so he fled Egypt and went to the land of Midian.
Moses sat down at a well, and while he was there, 7 daughters of a local priest came by with their sheep to give them water. But some other shepherds showed up and tried to drive the daughters away.
Moses saw this happening and stepped in to help the daughters water their flock. They brought Moses back to their home, and some time passes, and Moses ends up marrying one of the daughters and then becomes the shepherd of her family's flock.
One day, when Moses was out watching the sheep, the angel of the Lord appeared to him, but not as a person. The angel appeared as a bush that was on fire. Moses said,
"Why does this bush not burn?" And then the Lord spoke to Moses.
"Do not draw near this place. Remove your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. I know the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries, and I know their sorrows. I have come down that I might deliver them from the hand of the Egyptians and bring them to a land flowing with milk and honey. Come, Moses, I will send you to Pharaoh so that you might bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt."
What if they don't believe me or listen to my voice? The Lord then turned the staff that was in Moses' hand into a snake. If this had been me, I definitely would have been scared. The Lord then tells Moses to grab the snake by the tail. And the snake becomes a staff again.
Even after seeing this sign, Moses still didn't want to go. He was afraid that he would not be very good at speaking. This really shows how patient God is because God explained to him that his older brother Aaron was still in Egypt and would speak for him. God said, "Take your staff with you, and with it you will do great signs."
Moses returned home, packed up his family, and then headed to Egypt.
Moses has one of the longest written stories in the Bible. But did you also know that he was a writer himself? He wrote the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Try saying that over and over. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. Blah! What a tongue twister!
As Moses returned to Egypt, he found his brother Aaron, and together they went to Pharaoh. Moses said,
The Lord God of Israel says, "Let my people go."
Who is this Lord that I should let the children of Israel go? They are many in the land, and I will not let them go.
As they're trying to get their people freed, Pharaoh asks them to do a miracle. So Aaron takes his staff, he throws it on the ground, and a snake comes. But Pharaoh was not impressed, so he has his wise men and magicians throw their staffs on the ground, and they become snakes also.
But Aaron's staff snake begins to eat the other snakes. But Pharaoh is still not impressed. Later that day, God told Moses to go down to the river where Pharaoh was.
Moses says to Pharaoh, "Let my people go." And Aaron stretches out the same staff that had become a snake over the land, and all the water becomes blood. This would be the first plague. The wise men and the magicians are also able to turn water into blood, and so Pharaoh is still not impressed.
The second plague.
Let my people go. Say hello to my frog friends.
Oh, frogs covered the entire land. But the magicians, well, they could make their own frogs.
The third plague, lice.
Oh, these bugs are so annoying. This time, the magicians couldn't copy the plague, and they said, "This must be the finger of God."
The fourth plague. You thought lice were bad? How about flies?
Pharaoh was so annoyed by the flies that he said the children of Israel could go free. But as soon as Moses made the flies go away, he changed his mind.
The fifth plague, animals deceased.
That means that all of the cows and the horses and the donkeys and the sheep, well, they all got sick and died, except for the livestock that was with Israel.
But Pharaoh's heart was still hard.
The sixth plague, boils.
These boils are so itchy. My skin hurts.
The seventh plague, hail.
Take cover. All the hail is coming down. Ow, ow, ouch. Ow.
The eighth plague, locust.
Oh, these locusts are so annoying. They keep eating all of our food.
The ninth plague, darkness.
I can't see anything. Get these people out of here.
The 10th plague, death of the firstborn.
During the night, the firstborn of every Egyptian household was taken by death, even Pharaoh's firstborn child. The next day, there was a great cry in the land.
Pharaoh was done with Moses. Take your people and leave this land. The children of Israel were finally free of the Egyptians.
Water red, frogs in bed, lice in head, flies in bread, cows like dead, skin all red, hail from sky, locusts high, crops all say bye. And with darkness came a cry. That's because Moses said, "Let my people go." Pharaoh said, "No, no, 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 no." So God plagued the land, oh, for a while.
For how long?
With Pharaoh in denial.
Why was Pharaoh in denial for so long?
Water red, frogs in bread, lice in head, flies in bread, cows like dead, skin all red, hail from sky, locusts high, crops all say bye. And with darkness came a cry. That's because Moses said,
Let my people go.
Pharaoh said,
No, 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 no.
So God plagued the land, oh, for a while. With Pharaoh in denial.
Wow, what an incredible story.
As Moses and his people left the city, Pharaoh became angry. He took 600 chariots to chase after them. He wanted to capture and bring them back to make them slaves again.
As the chariots came upon Israel, they became scared. "Why did you do this to us, Moses?" Wow, the children of Israel sure do like to complain.
Once again, Moses talked with God and had a plan. A pillar of fire comes down, and it blocks the Egyptian army. But the Red Sea was blocking the Hebrews from getting away. And so Moses holds out his staff over the Red Sea.
A great wind comes, and the waters part. The children of Israel walk through the middle of the Red Sea.
The pillar of fire goes away, and the Egyptian army continues their pursuit. As they all come into the middle of the Red Sea, Moses calls out to the waters to come down. And the Egyptian army was lost.
Moses and the children of Israel, they are finally free.
Wow, what a great story. What I like about this is how humble Moses is and how he doesn't want to be the savior of his people or think he's worthy to be, but God keeps calling him.
What I like about this story is that Moses never tries to make the actions his own. He always checks in with God to make sure that he's doing what God wants him to do.
Well, friends, thanks for listening to our story. And if you would like to read it for yourself, you can find it in the book of Exodus.
And come back again to the Bible Den, where we go
Into the Bible. Majors. I know you're in here somewhere, Majors. Are you hiding from me, Majors? Aha! Caught you!
Oh man!
What are you doing? Why are you hiding?
I was getting ready for the story today.
Wait, what story are we telling?
You know, the one about the spies. And we're sneaking around.
No.
And the wall.
Oh, yeah, now I remember what story we're telling. Hey, friends, do you know what story we're gonna tell you today?
It's a story of Joshua and the Wall of Jericho. It's a story about listening to God and doing what he commands, even if it feels kind of silly.
Well, we better start walking to get ready for the story. But first, let's get into the Bible.
Our story starts in the time of Bible times. Joshua had been made leader of the camp of Israel. They had just been through a really hard time, spending the last 40 years in the desert. But now it was time to go to the land of milk and honey.
Joshua wanted to make sure that he was prepared for any dangers that he might come across. He sent out 2 spies to go and scout out the land. As the spies were traveling, they came to the city of Jericho. They snuck inside and they found a house owned by a woman named Rahab.
While the men were staying at Rahab's house, a message was sent to the king of Jericho. Behold, O king, some men have come here from the camp of Israel. They are here to spy on our country.
So the king sent to Rahab, "Bring out those men who came to you. They've come here to search our country."
Rahab hid the spies, but then she told the king's men, "Yes, they were here, but I did not know what they were. And when the gate closed tonight, they hurried out quickly. Go, if you chase them now, you will be able to find them with no delay."
But this is not really what happened. She actually hid the spies up on her roof underneath some stalks of flax. The king's men pursued after them, and they closed the gate to the city. Rahab then went up to her roof and talked to the spies.
"I know that the Lord God has given you this land. I have heard of his power, and I do believe that he is the true God of heaven. Please, will your God protect my father and my mother and my sisters and brothers from destruction?"
The men replied, "Our lives for yours. Tell no one what happened, and when the Lord gives us this land, you will be spared."
Rahab let down a rope from the window in her house, which was connected to the city wall. She told the spies,
Go into the mountains and hide there for 3 days, until the men who pursue you have returned to the city."
As the men were leaving, they said, "If you wish to stay safe, leave this scarlet cord hanging out of your window. Have your father, mother, brother, and sister all come to your house, and they will be protected. But if anyone leaves your house, their lives will be in danger."
"According to your word, so be it." Rahab sent the spies away, but she kept the scarlet cord tied into her window.
The men did just as she had said. They went into the mountains and hid for 3 days. When the pursuers had left, they journeyed back to the camp of Israel. They told Joshua all that had happened, and they said, "The Lord has truly delivered this land into our hands, because the people of this land are scared of us." I wonder, why were the people so scared of the Israelite army?
I am Francis Wesley Fitzgerald III, and this is Fact Time. The people were scared of Joshua and Israel because they had heard about when they crossed the Red Sea coming out of Egypt, and God had opened the waters before them. The army also had defeated 2 kings of the Amorites, King Sihon and King Og. It makes sense that the people of Jericho were scared of Israel and stayed hidden behind their big walls.
Joshua and the army of Israel walked up to Jericho's walls, but Jericho was sealed up tight. No one was allowed in or out because of the army of Israel. This posed quite a challenge to Joshua because it's really hard to take over a city with high walls that's been sealed up tight.
Now God had a plan for Joshua and said, "You can see that I've given this city into your hands. Have your men of war march around the city once for 6 days. Have 7 priests bear 7 trumpets of ram horns before the ark.
But on the 7th day, you shall march around the city 7 times. And when the priests blow their trumpets with a long blast, and the people shout with a great shout, the walls of the city shall fall flat before you."
So God was telling Joshua to have his people march around the city of Jericho for 7 days. This was a pretty crazy idea, because how could walking around a city make the walls fall down? They would have to have a lot of faith in God to want to do this.
Have you ever had a wall in your life that was blocking you, keeping you from where you needed to go? It might not be a literal wall. This wall could be another person, or it could even be yourself. Now, there is a race called a marathon where people try to run for 26 miles without ever stopping.
Wow, that's a lot of running. And what happens is the participants start running the marathon, and they run and get past 5 miles with no problems. They run and do 10 miles with no problems. They go and do 20 miles with no Actually, they do have problems here. What happens is their body gets tired, their legs start to ache, and they hit something called a wall.
Now, this isn't a literal wall like the walls of Jericho, but the runners are so tired. They've run for 20 miles already, and even though they only have 6 more to go, their bodies don't want to take another step.
The runner at this point has a choice. They can stop and not finish the marathon, or they can keep going and not listen to their body and mind saying that it's impossible for them. When Joshua and Israel looked at Jericho, it must have seemed impossible that walking around the city would make the walls fall down. But they had faith in God.
Joshua called the priests and he told them, "Take the Ark of the Covenant, and 7 priests take up 7 horns." Wait a second. They're going to walk with the Ark of the Covenant around the city of Jericho. What was the Ark of the Covenant, and why was it such a big deal?
The Ark of the Covenant is a very big deal, and probably one of the most important relics of the Old Testament. The Ark of the Covenant was a gold-covered wooden chest containing the 2 stone tablets of the 10 Commandments. It also had the staff of Aaron and a pot of manna. Manna is like cakes from heaven, but we'll save that for another time. What I find most interesting about the Ark is that it has been lost since 587 BC, and no one knows where it is. Even when they were carrying the Ark back in Bible times, it was always hidden under a veil. So no one could see it except the priests and the Levites.
That is a pretty big deal, I guess. And so the priest and the rest of Joshua's troop begin marching around Jericho. The priest blow their trumpets, but Joshua commanded the people,
Let no sound come out of your mouth, and let your voice not be heard until the day I command you to shout.
So not only did everyone have to march around the city, they would have to be totally silent while doing it. This kind of reminds me of when I was in grade school and we would have to line up to go out to recess and we had to be totally silent. It was always really tough for me to do this. But the camp of Israel knew that this was important, and so they listened to Joshua's command. They then began marching around the city of Jericho, and after the first day, they came back to their camp and they rested for the night.
Early in the morning, Joshua woke up. Some of the priests went and got the ark. Others went and got their instruments, their horns, and they began to play them.
All the people came together and they marched around Jericho for the second day.
I just imagine all the people of Jericho looking out, seeing them walking and being really confused.
Shh, we're not supposed to talk, remember? And they marched around Jericho one time for 6 days.
But then the 7th day came, and if you remember, they were supposed to walk around 7 times.
And after the 7th time, the priest blew their horns, and Joshua said,
Shout! The Lord has given you this city!
And the priest blew the horns, and the people shouted, and the walls came crashing down.
After the walls of Jericho fell, Israel had no trouble taking over Jericho. But don't forget about Rahab. She put the scarlet cord out of her window after she listened to the spies earlier in the story. When the walls of Jericho fell, even though her house was connected to the walls, her house did not fall.
Whoa, that's pretty cool. You know what? I feel like celebrating. I could use some music right now.
Let's all sing together, friends.
Round and round, is this a battle of circles? Round and round, marching and surrounding Jericho. Ark of God, 7 priests, blowing rams' horns.
Silently, not a word to their mouth.
Until the 7th day shines.
On the 7th day,
Round and round, is this a battle of circles? Round and round, marching and surrounding Jericho. Walls of stone, battlements, tortured and fell flat.
heaving, sinking,
With a crash. Round and round, is this a battle of circles? Round and round, marching and surrounding Jericho. God will do great things for those who trust in Him. By faith, the walls fell down.
and they just marveled and grinned.
Round and round, is this a battle of circles? Round and round, this is God conquering Jericho. Very good, Remy.
Thanks, Rita.
After a story like that, I'm ready to knock down some walls in my life. Do you have any walls in your life?
Then take a hammer and knock them down.
No, Nathan. Not like that. I'm talking about walls like other people. Or maybe yourself. Do you think you have walls like this in your life? If you do, then pray and ask God for guidance.
The solution might seem a little bit strange at first, but think about it, talk with others, and figure out the best way to knock down those figurative walls in your life.
Thanks for coming to our story today. And if you want to read the story for yourself, you can find it in the first 6 chapters of Joshua. And please, share this story with your friends.
And come back again to the Bible Den when we go into the Bible.
Well, Pastor, are you sure you want me to do this? I'm just not sure that I'm the right person for the job. Oh, okay, I'll think about it, and then I'll call you back. I don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this.
What's going on, Majors?
Well, that was my pastor from church, and he wants me to tell the Bible story at church this week.
Well, what's wrong with that? You're great at telling stories.
No, telling stories at church is a much bigger deal than telling Bible stories here in the Bible Den with you. I just wish I could run away from all this.
Well, if you did run away, there's a chance you could be eaten by a big fish.
Yeah. What? Huh?
I think it's time to tell today's story. It's a Bible story about a prophet of God who runs from God.
Oh yeah, I think I know this story. Do you know a Bible story about a prophet who tries to run away from God? We're telling the story of Jonah. And you know, I really feel like this story is gonna help me out a lot with my problem. So let's get into the Bible.
Our story starts in the time of Bible times. If you would like to follow along for yourself, you can go to the book of Jonah. Jonah was a prophet, which means that part of his job was to listen and do whatever God commanded. But this became a problem for Jonah because God told Jonah to go to the great city of Nineveh and tell them to stop with their wickedness. But Jonah didn't want to go to the city of Nineveh.
I don't want to go to Nineveh. I want to go someplace far away from Nineveh.
Jonah travels to Joppa and finds a ship to take him far away from Nineveh. He would head to the city of Tarshish.
I can understand why Jonah wouldn't want to go to Nineveh. For one, I know in my own personal life, sometimes I want to do what I want to do, even though I know it's not the best path for me. And two, Jonah was scared to go to Nineveh because it was a bad place. But what I want to know is, why did he want to go to Tarshish?
That's a good question, Majors. I think he wanted to go to Tarshish because it was the opposite direction from Nineveh. Jonah was in Joppa, which was about 550 miles from Nineveh. That would be a long trip that would take about a day to just drive there, and they didn't even have cars back then. But Tarshish was even further away. It was 2,500 miles from Joppa, and it was heading away from Nineveh. So if Jonah was really trying to escape and go to a place far away, this was a good option.
Jonah wanted to get far, far away from the city of Nineveh. So he books a ship going to Tarshish. He pays the fees. He then goes down below. And as the ship travels to Tarshish, Jonah gets a little tired and decides to take a nap.
Jonah was asleep, and then a storm came up. The ship began to rock back and forth and back and forth. All the crew members became terrified. They thought they were all going to die. The captain went down to where Jonah was sleeping and woke him up.
The crew starts to wonder why this storm was happening to them. And so they cast lots, and the lots fall to Jonah. The crew then asks Jonah, "Who are you? What's your job? And where did you come from?"
I am a Hebrew, and I fear the living God of heaven, and I believe that this storm is really about me.
The men knew that he had fled from God. "Why have you done this to us? And what are we supposed to do with yez?"
Pick me up and throw me into the sea. I believe if you do this, the storm will calm down.
Did he just say, throw him into the sea? This is a crazy idea. First, Jonah tries to run away from God. Then he says, throw me into the sea. Jonah must have been going crazy. But the crew didn't want to throw him into the sea because they knew that Jonah would be lost. And so they try to row for land. But the storm just continues to get stronger and stronger. And the crew cried out to God, "Please, Lord, don't let us perish for this man's life, and don't charge us for what we must do." The crew then threw Jonah overboard, and the storm stopped. I like to think as soon as Jonah hit the water, the storm became silent and the waters were just calm. The crew, seeing this, then prayed to God.
Let's not forget about Jonah. After he fell into the water, he probably began to sink over time.
Would Jonah be lost to the sea from running away from God? No. God was not done with Jonah quite yet.
And suddenly, a great fish swallows Jonah whole. Can you imagine that? Jonah, in the middle of the ocean with no hope of survival, suddenly is swallowed by a giant fish. But what I want to know is how big a fish would have to be able to swallow Jonah whole.
Welcome back for some more fact. There is a lot of debate on what actually swallowed Jonah. Some say it could have been a big fish, while others believe the Bible referred to anything in the water as a fish, so maybe it was a whale, or even a big shark. I think there was a good chance that it was a whale because of how big whales can be. It's possible for a whale to be as large as 70 feet long and have an esophagus that is 50 centimeters wide. So even though it might be uncommon, it is possible for a whale to swallow a man whole.
Jonah was now inside the fish. Now, if that had been me, I probably would have been pretty scared because there would not be much light inside that fish.
Hello? Is anyone in here?
It would actually be totally dark.
Hey, it's really dark in here.
And it would probably smell bad in there too. Ugh.
Yeah, it smells like fish in here.
So Jonah prays a long prayer to the Lord, and it kind of went like this.
Even though you have thrown me into the deep, into the heart of the sea, and the weeds surround me, still salvation is of the Lord.
Have you ever been trapped in a fish? Well, I haven't, but I have been trapped on an island. The island was called Jay, and I was supposed to fly off the island on an airplane. But before the plane came, it broke down. and they said that it would take 3 months for the plane to get fixed. Now I got pretty scared because I didn't have much money or food, definitely not enough to survive for 3 months on my own. So I went down to the beach and I prayed to God. I knew that I could not get off this island on my own accord. So after I prayed, I went off the beach and someone came to me and said that there was a ship coming to pick me up and all the others on the island to take us home. What's crazy is that no one had heard about this ship coming until after I went and prayed. I really do believe that God sent that ship to bring me home, just like God sent that fish to get Jonah. I can tell you firsthand that there are miracles today, just like in the Bible.
Hey, Nathan, did you forget about me? It's still dark in here.
Oh yeah. So after 3 days, the Lord finally listened to Jonah's prayer. The Lord spoke to the fish, and the fish vomited Jonah onto dry land.
The Lord spoke again to Jonah. Go to Nineveh and preach the message I tell you. This time, Jonah went to Nineveh.
Okay, kids, today we're gonna listen to a song about Jonah and the belly of the whale. Are you okay with that, Rena?
Sure thing, Remy. Storm starts tearing up the sail. Fish are slimy, fish have scales.
Wait, like scales so that they can, like, weigh each other?
No, wrong kind of scales, Remy.
Oh, okay.
The men rode and rode, but
Rode?
peace never showed.
Never showed.
Jonah had to be swallowed.
Oh, like this? Whoa.
Yep. Jonah prayed to God for 3 days.
3 long days.
Repenting from all his ways.
Repentance.
Fish spit him out
Blah.
after his pout. Jonah's heart had no more doubts.
Wow, what an incredible story.
Wow, what a great song. So Jonah would then go to Nineveh and tell them that they had 40 days to see their wickedness, or else their city would be overthrown.
40 days! You got 40 days to repent!
Nineveh was so big that it took 3 days for Jonah to travel from one end of the city to the other end of the city. Just think about how big that is. It would take him 3 days to walk through the city. But the people actually listened and believed Jonah.
They listened? I can't believe they listened.
Even the king heard the news of what Jonah was saying and told all the people of the city to turn away from their evil ways and to come to God.
God saw their works, and he saw that they turned from their evil ways. God relented from the destruction that was planned for the city.
So because Jonah finally listened to God and went to the city of Nineveh and preached to the wicked people, and those wicked people listened to Jonah and repented to God, a huge city was saved from destruction.
All right, Pastor, if you're sure you've got the right person for the job, then I'd be more than happy to do the story this week. And I've already got a great story in mind. It's the story of Jonah.
So how does that feel, Majors?
It really feels good to do the right thing. Whenever I do what God tells me, I feel better inside.
That's a good message, Majors. I know when I listen to God, I feel better inside. But I will say, it's a lot easier to tell people to listen to God than to actually go and follow what God's saying.
Do you have any ideas that might help me make it easier?
Well, I would say my best advice would be to pray and then try to listen to God on the little things. So then it's a lot easier to listen to God on the bigger things.
That is an excellent idea. Thanks.
Well, friends, thanks so much for listening to our story today. If you would like to read it for yourself, it can be found in the book of Jonah. And remember, listen to God and come back again to the Bible Den for when we go into the Bible.
Now all it needs is some pretty little stars.
Majors, what are you working on over here?
Oh, well, I'm creating my own planet out of paint, and I'm gonna call it the Majors.
Okay, cool. Hey friends, do you like creating new things or making artwork that's never been seen before? Or do you like inventing new ideas?
If you do, you're really gonna like our story today.
We're going to the very beginning of the Bible, to the start of it all.
We're going to the first chapter in the first book of the Bible, Genesis. This is the story of the creation of the world and the creation of man.
It's also the creation of something very scary and bad.
Oh, yeah. But that's okay. We'll talk about that later. Let's get into the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and surrounded by darkness. But then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light.
And God saw the light and that it was good. He decided to divide the light from the darkness. The light would be day and darkness would be night. So evening and morning were the first day.
I'm really glad that God made light, because if he didn't, it would be really hard to live here because it would be dark all the time.
Maybe that's because you're scared of the dark.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
I also think it's cool that God created both daytime and nighttime, because during the day, I like to go and have fun and play, but then as nighttime comes, I also like to see the moon and stars and then go to sleep.
Wait a second, Nathan. We aren't quite there yet. Let's stick to the story. God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And it was so. God called the firmament heaven. That was the end of the second day.
I always forget that that's the second thing that God created after light. It must have been a pretty good place.
Then God said, "Let the water under the heavens be gathered together, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the water he called seas.
Seas? Seas.
No, Nathan, not like that. Like SEAS.
Oh, okay.
And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, and herbs that yield seed, and fruit trees that produce fruits of its own kind." And it was so.
And the earth brought forth grass, seeds, and trees that produced fruit. God saw that it was good. You know what? I could sure go for some fruit right now.
All right, Nathan, but just be careful as to which fruit you eat.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. We'll get to that part of the story later.
And then God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens, and let them divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons." And it was so.
God created two great lights, a greater light to rule the day and a lesser light to rule the night. I believe this was the sun and moon. He also created the stars at this time. And God saw that it was good. And this was the end of the fourth day.
Then God said, "Let the waters abound with living creatures, and let birds fly over the earth." So God made sea creatures and birds to fill the earth and the heavens.
And God saw that it was good. This was the end of the 5th day.
And God said, "Let the earth bring forth the living creature, cattle, the creeping thing, and beasts of the earth." And it was so.
Oh, I know what part's next. It's time for man.
Yep. God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let him have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and the animals of the land."
So God created man in his own image, both male and female. He blessed them and said that they were to have dominion over earth and all living things, and that they were to multiply and fill the earth. God looked over everything that he made, and indeed, it was good. This was the end of the 6th day.
Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the 7th day, God ended the work which he had done, and rested on the 7th day from all the work which he had done. Then God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because in it he had rested from all his work which God had created and made.
Wow, that's interesting that God rested on that day. I know after I've had a hard week of work, I always enjoy when Saturday comes so that I can rest from all that I've been doing during the week. I really do believe that God created Saturday as a day for us to rest. I would encourage you, next time Saturday comes, just take a deep breath and just rest and rejuvenate.
And those are the 7 days of creation. You know what? I could use a great song to help me remember those 7 days. Cue the music.
First he made light.
It was just right.
Then he made it.
We cannot spare
Land and sea.
fruit and trees. Oh, and the light was dividing the day from night.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I
It's
didn't
okay,
mean to
Remy.
just go off on myself
it's,
like that.
It's okay, Remy. It's okay.
Okay.
Fifth was for fish.
And birds of the air.
6 living creatures.
And manly features. Oh, and women too, of course. Hey, Rena, what happened on the 7th day?
And the 7th God rested. And
the 7th God rested.
He created this day to rest.
Isn't God just the best?
First he made light.
It was just right.
Then he made it.
We cannot spare
Land and sea.
fruit and trees.
Lights divided day and night. Fifth was for fish.
And birds of the air.
6 living creatures.
And manly features.
And the 7th God rested.
And the 7th God rested.
He rated this day to rest.
Isn't God just the best?
Yes, he is.
Wow.
Now, I want to go back to the creation of man because I find this really interesting. It has not rained yet, so the earth is covered in dust. God forms man out of dust and breathes into his nostrils the breath of life. Man becomes a living being.
Now, from my understanding, all creatures were formed from the ground. But God took the time to form man and breathe his breath directly into him. This means that we are special.
God then creates the Garden of Eden and places man there to watch over it. The trees begin to grow and produce food. The tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil were both there.
Then God said to the man, "You may eat of every tree in the garden, except from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For the day that you eat from this tree, you shall surely die."
The man's name would be Adam, and God called all the animals of the earth to come to Adam so that he could name them. Whoa, that's pretty cool. So Adam got to name all the animals? He would have to be pretty creative to do this. I'm gonna call you horse, and you shall be cat. Oh, And you with the long neck, you're gonna be giraffe. Ooh, nice stripes there, buddy. You're gonna be zebra.
All the animals had a pair, but God saw that Adam did not have a helper comparable to him. It is not good that man should be alone. And so God caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep.
As Adam was asleep, God took out one of his ribs and made it into a woman. God then brought the woman before Adam, and Adam said, "She is the bone of my bones, the flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man." The woman's name would be Eve.
Now in the garden, there was a serpent that was more cunning than any other animal. It was so cunning, it could talk. It said to Eve,
"Has God said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden?"
"We can eat of every fruit of every tree in the garden, except for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If we eat from it or even touch it, we will die."
"You will surely not die, for God knows when you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil."
This was a very tempting offer for Eve. It meant that she would have the same knowledge as God. After she saw that it was good for food and could make one wise, she took and she ate.
Eve also gave one of the fruits to Adam. They both ate of the fruit, and their eyes were opened, and they realized they didn't have any clothes on, and so they sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves up.
When they heard God walking in the garden, they hid themselves in the trees. God called to Adam, "Where are you?"
Adam said, "I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and so I hid myself."
"Who told you this? Have you eaten from the tree I commanded you not to eat from?"
"The woman you brought to me was the one who gave me the fruit."
Then Eve said, "The serpent deceived me, and I ate the fruit." God turned to the serpent. "You are now more cursed than any animal. You will go on your belly." And then God turned to Eve. "You will now have pain and sorrow in childbirth." And then God turned to Adam. "Because you have listened to the woman and did not obey the command that I gave you, the ground is cursed and you will have to work it. Thorns and thistles will now grow."
Both Adam and Eve were spared from eating the fruit, but a life would still have to be paid for them to be saved. But that's a story for another time.
Adam and Eve were sent out of the garden, and an angel was placed at the entrance with a flaming sword. And this ends the story of creation.
Even though this is a sad ending to the story, it's only just the beginning of the inspiring stories all in the Bible, all leading to the most powerful display of love and sacrifice. John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, that whosoever should believe in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life." Even though there's sin in this world, and even though there is a serpent out there that wants to lead all of us to do bad things, I truly believe that if we all have faith in God, he will save each one of us from sin.
Now, I know that I have sinned, and I'm pretty sure Nathan has sinned too. And as we just learned, the first two humans, Adam and Eve, also sinned. Maybe you've sinned and you feel guilty about it. Well, I want to encourage you to remember that God's love has saved us from our sins. All we have to do is trust in him.
That wraps up our story for today. Thank you, friends, for listening. And please come back again to the Bible Den for when we go into the Bible.
Did you know the oldest writings we have of the Bible are about 2,700 years old? Wow, the Bible is pretty old. That's even older than my grandpa.
Hey, I take offense to that.
Oh, sorry, Grandpa.